And I give now the floor to Frans.
Thank you very much, Ernst. I'll try and avoid death by speech and be brief and try and reflect on some of the observations that were made. First of all, I think we need to start with the observation that most of the problems in the Middle East and Northern Africa were actually originally engineered in Europe. This is always something that will trouble us. Because if you look at how Europe is trying to be involved in many of these situations in Northern Africa and the Middle East, there is very often too much history and too little future in the way European nations operate. When I arrived here this morning, I saw this book on our table, Divided They Stand by Aaron Lund, and I thought, yet another book about EU foreign policy. But apparently it's not, it's just about Syria. But the fact that there's too much history in the way European nations operate in Northern Africa and the Middle East leads to the inability to create an EU foreign policy. Because individual nations, on the basis of their historic responsibilities and ties with the region, still continue to operate on an individual basis, Syria still being the case in point. So this is one of the first things we will need to change. Second remark I have is on the evident American withdrawal from the region. There is, just look at the speech by President Obama he held on defense priorities of the United States in the White House. It was very clear that they simply cannot foot the bill of being active all over the world. They will withdraw in part from that region, concentrate solely on Israel, to some extent Saudi Arabia and Egypt, and the rest will no longer be a priority. And who will take care of that on our doorstep? Only Europe can answer that call, but still we need to get rid of some of our history and look more towards our future. My third remark is one of hope. Mohamed Bouazizi killed himself because he wanted to live exactly the way like my children, who had almost the same age, live in Europe. He had seen how European youths live, and this is what he wanted for himself and other people. Isn't this the greatest compliment Europe could get, even if it had such a tragic ending? But his tragic ending led to new possibilities for the wider region, and I think Europe should again answer that call. The first reasons I mentioned are reasons out of fear of instability for us. This reason is a reason of optimism, a reason of positive change. The World Bank recently came out with a report on Europe called Golden Growth. I would ask you to look at that report. It's a fascinating report. Somebody from outside Europe, the writer is an Indian, looking at Europe with such a positive attitude that it surprises Europeans. We tend to be more pessimistic than necessary about Europe. Read the report, and it says the quintessential element of the European Union for 50 years has been its unparalleled capacity to transformation. It had transformed and integrated societies which would otherwise never have been transformed to that extent and not reached the levels of development they have reached now. The essence of our challenge, and I say this to my friend Amr Moussa, the essence of our challenge now is to provide for our neighbors the same possibility of transformation without necessarily this ending into integration. And this is a new challenge for Europe because we have never decoupled transformation and integration. I believe and I fear that Turkey is now decoupling it for us because of the process and relationship between Turkey and the EU. What Turkey got out of it was the transformation the AKP wanted. And now Turkey might shy away from the integration it could possibly use because it doesn't need it anymore to attain the goals it wanted to attain with transformation. That is not a problem for Turkey, it's a problem for the EU. Now, Mr. Herzog rightfully pointed to the fact that social justice is the biggest concern of social democratic voters in Israel and in Europe. But the issues cannot be distinguished. In Israel, social justice, why can't Israel, which is performing so well economically, not provide enough social justice for its population and its middle classes? Because Israel is spending far too much money to provide security for illegal settlements, and to provide income for people who simply don't work for religious reasons, who are coming in from other countries. So there is a direct link between what is happening, and I'm quoting the former Israeli ambassador in Germany when I say this is not something I invented myself. There is a direct link between the perceived lack of social justice and the security issue and the not resolution of the other issue. And there is the same relationship in Europe. Why is Europe unable to provide a common foreign and security policy? Because people are afraid for the lack of social justice within European societies. The fear projected on the abroad, it originates in our societies. And social democracy has to provide an answer for the fears within our society if we want to project our ideas of stability outside of our societies. And this is arguably the biggest challenge we face, given the fact that the crisis that hits Europe will last for quite a long time and will not provide huge growth in Europe. Another remark I want to make about our social democratic family. Let us be brutally honest about our own mistakes and our own culpability in the relationship with the regimes in Northern Africa and the Arab world. We are blessed by the fact that we are not really blamed by the people in that region for that relationship. But honesty requires that we would review our relationship with Ben Ali's party and other parties, which is a scandalous past of social democracy, and we should take care of that and make sure we don't do that in the future. Finally, the EU has no clear idea of what it wants with the region. Individual member states have clear ideas about that, based too much in history, not enough in future. We need to develop a common idea. We need to depart from the idea that Northern and Eastern Europe take care of the East, and Mediterranean Europe takes care of the Middle East and Northern Africa. There is simply, the problem of Northern Africa and the Middle East is simply too big for Europe to have divided policies on this. I was almost 20 years ago, I was in Moscow with European Commissioner Hans van den Broek. We went to see Yeltsin, and Yeltsin said to his foreign minister, Andriosha, who is this man? And Kozyrev said, this is Hans van den Broek, he's a European commissioner. The European what? The European commissioner. I don't like commissioners, which is understandable from his historic perspective. And then he said, but European of what? And he said, Kozyrev said to him, of the European Union. What is the European Union? European Union is a group of countries. Okay, Andriosha. Tell me, Andriosha, are we members of the European Union? So this European Union has this huge appeal on our neighbors, and we need to find a way of defining, of creating the huge force of transformation across the borders of the European Union without necessarily this ending into integration of new states in the EU. Thank you very, very much.